see if we have time for the debate afterwards. I would appreciate very much. So thank you very much, Costas.
Thank you for the introduction. Time is very short. I will be very brief and quick. I will present to you work that we have been doing in London, but also in Athens, as part of this network, the RNCEP network that we have established in France and in Spain. We just published a report, and I believe that the report is one of the most complete pieces of work on how to exit. It deals with Greece, obviously, but it provides a bit of a blueprint for other countries too. So let me come to the point straight away, answering the question to begin with. The European Monetary Union has failed. It's a dramatic historical failure. It is probably the most important historical failure in economic policy in Europe in a couple of centuries. It cannot be fixed, as I will argue in a minute, but the failure fundamentally has to do with the fact that the monetary union does not allow for growth, it does not allow for an increase in income, it does not allow for full employment, and it does not allow for egalitarianism. I haven't got time to go into the details of why that is. I will mention three key elements in the failure of the monetary union. The first is, of course, Stability and Growth Pact, which is the institutionalization of austerity. Austerity has become institutionalized, embedded in the structure of the monetary union and the European Union too. Second, the banking union, which is not a real union. It's basically a mechanism for the supervision of European banks by the ECB. But when it comes to banking failure, which is when banking unions are actually measured, in other words, who will provide the money for a failing bank, then you will mark my words, there will be no banking union. The nation state will be called to pay for each bank that fails. And that kind of banking union, of course, does not allow for a convergence of interest rates. Interest rates have diverged, and that means that costs for Italian businesses, small businesses, are very different for costs for German businesses. That doesn't make for success, that makes for failure across Europe. The third reason why the monetary union has failed is because, of course, at the instigation of Germany, there is constant pressure for reform, which means neoliberal attacks on the labor market and on the structure of the economy generally. This is, at best, misconceived, at worst, murderous for European economies, because, of course, the only reason why this kind of policy had beneficial effects for some sections of Germany is because Germany started first in the monetary union and it has gained the advantage over the others. This cannot be replicated. It is actually nonsense to try and replicate what Germany did within the monetary union. To cut a long story short, I haven't got the time, the monetary union works only in the interests of big German exporters. The only section that is clearly benefited are big German exporters, no one else that I can see. Not even banks. German banks have not particularly benefited from this because the domestic economy in Germany is not doing very well because Germany, of course, through the monetary union looks abroad. France and Italy are trapped. Italy in particular is not going anywhere. All the evidence shows it very clearly. They cannot compete with Germany. They've got nowhere to go in the monetary union. As for the periphery, Greece, Portugal, and increasingly Spain, these are ruined countries, effectively, no prospect of growth. Spain's got a little bit of growth recently, but that's to do with the real estate sector picking up again. Nothing fundamentally has changed. Not only this, but it looks as if a monetary crisis or some kind of financial crisis is again likely in the monetary union if we look at Target 2 and if we look at how the financial markets are interpreting what's happening in the monetary union. It looks as if we're heading for some kind of major disruption. Now, that much is clear. Can it be reformed? The question is, can it be reformed? Can it be restructured? Can it be changed from within? Now, I don't really know what to say to this, because it keeps coming back. It keeps coming back, and it keeps coming back from people of the left. Let's try hard and create a nice monetary union. Let's try and somehow change it from within. It's like an illness, an embedded illness that it won't go away. Now, we've got evidence that this is impossible. I'm not going to theorize about it. I will tell you, I'll give you evidence. And the evidence is called Syriza. The attempt to change the monetary union from within has been made. This is a policy that has been tried. There's nothing new about it. This is the strategy of Syriza. It was a strategy of lifting austerity and doing nice things for working people based on a democratic mandate. Syriza won the election based on a democratic mandate, and then pushing for institutional change within the European Union and the monetary union. This was explicitly put as the Syriza strategy, and it was a strategy devised by Alexis Tsipras and Yannis Varoufakis. Let's call a spade a spade. This was a strategy devised by Alexis Tsipras and Yannis Varoufakis. The strategy failed completely, utterly. It didn't just fail a little, it failed totally. Why? Why did the strategy fail completely? Because the European Monetary Union has its own internal institutional logic. This internal institutional logic is based, first of all, on interests, big exporters, which I've mentioned, German exporters in particular, and second, on embedded ideology, the embedded ideology of neoliberalism in all the institutions of the monetary union. These are not reasonable people with whom you discuss academic issues. And if you've got better arguments, you will persuade them and they will change their mind. That's not how it works in the monetary union or in the European Union. When Syriza went there with these very nice ideas, he came up against a brick wall. That's what it meant. It met a brick wall, right? And that brick wall had an extremely powerful lever. It wasn't just a brick wall, it also had a very powerful lever. And that powerful lever is called Mario Draghi. Mario Draghi controls liquidity. When Syriza was first elected in January 2015, Mario Draghi turned it up a little bit. He sent the signal from Frankfurt. Syriza didn't understand it. At every turn, Mario Draghi kept turning the tap, shutting it down slowly until what? Until Greece was asphyxiated. The government of Syriza was asphyxiated. It sucked up all liquidity resources until there were none. And in the end, it surrendered. Why did it surrender in that way? Because the only other option to this was to create your own liquidity. There was no other option, period. I'm amazed that people don't get it. The only other option was to create your own liquidity, which means getting out of the monetary union. There is no other way to create your own liquidity. It is as simple and as clear as daylight. What exactly do people not understand in this? It's perfectly clear. The strategy has been tried and failed. This way it doesn't work. You cannot reform it. Syriza proved it. And we had the incredible phenomenon of a government of the left adopting the program of the opposition, which is what's happening at the moment. Now, so what? I'll finish. Well, I'll try. So what now? RNCEP has produced a report. We outline steps of exit and we outline policies that should follow in a left-wing direction that change the balance of forces between capital and labour, because this is the real issue. Change the balance of forces between capital and labour by getting the economy out of the morass in which it finds itself and create better prospects for social change in Europe. That's really what we're about. Dare I say, for socialism as well. Now, we did it for Greece, and we outlined the steps. Exit will have a number of steps. First step, default on the national debt. The Greek national debt is unserviceable and unsustainable. Default on the debt. There's nothing you can do in Greece if you don't default on the debt. Second, appoint the National Commissioner for Banking with true plenipotentiary powers, who will then take steps to nationalize the banks. If you don't nationalize the banks, there is no alternative strategy. Third, detach the Greek central bank from the Euro system. Leave it in the European system of central banks if you wish, but get it out of the Euro system. Fourth step, vote quickly in Lex Monetae, a new Lex Monetae for Greece, and begin to redenominate all wages and debts and assets which are under Greek law. You can do that, or you can start the process in a weekend, and then prepare to deal with the unrest in markets, and in the international market. Now, we've calculated redenomination costs. They are not as severe as people think, for the real sector, for the banking sector, even for the Bank of Greece. We've calculated inflation, likely inflation costs, less than 10% in the first year from the pass-through. Less than 10% in the first year. We've calculated competitiveness gains. Immediately, competitiveness will be readjusted, and you will stop the pressure on wages, which is internal devaluation, which has ruined Europe at the moment. Okay? And we've calculated a number of other things. On this basis, we're proposing then, first, expansionary fiscal policy. That's what lifting austerity means. Otherwise, it's just hot air. Expansionary fiscal policy. The public sector must take the lead. For that, you need public spending on investment, but also on consumption. This must be financed through monetary expenditure, monetary creation. That's why you need to control liquidity, and that will attract and generate other investment by the private sector as well. On this basis, which will reduce unemployment, because that's the only way to reduce unemployment, you start the process of industrial policy, because Greece needs industrial policy, as does Portugal, as does Spain, as do a number of other countries across Europe. Industrial policy means an investment strategy based on your own resources and possibly cooperation with others abroad. I'll finish, promise you. More broadly, of course, the monetary union needs to be dismantled. We can have that debate subsequently. We need new arrangements for the states of Europe based on control over capital and control over foreign exchange markets. One point I wish to make here, and I'll stop. Some people say this is nationalism and nationalist policy. I don't know whether I should laugh or cry over this. I really don't know whether I should burst out laughing when I hear that or start crying, that this is nationalism. It's utter nonsense. It's got nothing to do with nationalism. Actually, I would argue, this is the foundation of true internationalism. True internationalism starts at home. Left-wing internationalism starts at home. It doesn't start in the ether, you know, in the space between nations, in this imaginary Europe, which exists in some people's heads. Internationalism starts at home, right? It starts there when you take command over what? Popular and national sovereignty. Without sovereignty, there is no internationalism. It doesn't exist. Popular and national sovereignty, we need to redefine it. And on this basis, democracy. Because there is no democracy without sovereignty. No. The loss of democracy has meant the loss of sovereignty has meant loss of democracy. Now, I think the left needs to propose this kind of thing, and it needs to propose it by rediscovering some of its historic radicalism, because the line of fixing the monetary union, the European Union from within, is the line of a current that has lost its radicalism. The left needs to rediscover its radicalism and needs to propose a program along the lines that I've suggested, and in this way propose a new narrative to the European people. It needs to rediscover itself. We need a new narrative for the left. We need to tell the European people what we're about. We need to tell them what is internationalism, what is the future, what is socialism, what kind of society do we want. On this basis, not on the basis of hot air and imaginary images of what would be nice to have. We can do it. We're engaged in doing it. It's like we're getting out of a long illness here, out of a long slumber. Events like this are very important, but let's get a bit quicker. Please, comrades, let's get a bit faster. Enough talking, let's get on with it, and let's begin to propose concrete things concretely. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and it was